Welcome to Happy Times and Places, the podcast in which you find yourself stuck in the same carriage as some bloke waxing lyrical about the positive elements of a Doctor Who episode. That's me, Toby Hadoke. And I also have to guess what my special guest's favourite things about the episode are.
Hello, Toby, and thank you for inviting me into your happy time and place. My name is Tom Neenan. I'm a writer, actor, and comedian. I'm currently the lead writer on Late Night MASH on Dave. I also write and star in my own BBC Radio 4 anthology sitcom series The Haunting, which has voted a number of Who names over the years, but what your listeners might be most interested in is that I'm also one of the contributors to A Wheezing Groaning Sound, which is a Doctor Who podcast not dissimilar to yours, but whereas yours is positively inclined, mine is more inclined around smut. I would love to talk to you about certainly my favourite New Who story, which is Midnight. I'm recording this about a week after the huge news was announced that Russell T Davies will be returning to Doctor Who as showrunner, and I was extremely excited, and I won't lie, Midnight was a huge part of that excitement for me. So yes, this is the one that I would like you to watch and decide my favourite things. And you know what? Because I'm feeling nice, because I'm feeling positively inclined, I'm going to even tell you the manner of things, the 5 things I have selected, the manner of things that they are, to help you out so you can sort of relax a bit more as you're enjoying the brilliant and terrifying Doctor Who story, Midnight. So I am going to select a character. I am also going to select an actor. I am going to select a concept. I am going to select an element of production. And finally, I am going to select a moment. So there you go. Those are your arena. That's your area to think about as you're watching it. Enjoy watching Midnight. I think it may be perfect television. So yes, enjoy that. And I will speak to you at the end if we all indeed make it to the end. Good luck. Good luck. Enjoy. And I'll speak to you later.
Well, welcome everybody, and thanks to my special guest, Tom Neenan, who you heard there. Tom holds a special place in my heart for reasons I will explain. I've rushed Tom's choice up in the schedule. Some friends will be listening to this who've recorded stories for this podcast a year ago and gone, hang on, he said he's only just done it because Russell T Davies has just announced that he's coming back. I did flipping the Romans for you months ago, Toby. That's very, very true. In fact, and one of Tom's co-stars on the filthy smut that is The Wheezing Groaning Sound, an excellent, very funny Doctor Who podcast presented by Tom and John Rain and Paul Litchfield. And Paul has very kindly, ages ago, recorded one for me. So Paul could well be listening to this going, probably in a number of different accents because he's a vocally dexterous and very funny man. But he recorded for me Human Nature, Family of Blood, which I love, but it's not a Russell T Davies script. And the release schedule for this is a movable feast, and I've moved Human Nature, Family of Blood a couple of times for a couple of different reasons, and it was due, but then Russell T Davies announced that he was coming back, and so I wanted to do a Russell script, and I had a great time doing Love and Monsters, and this is a slightly different prospect, although it's a companion light one rather than a Doctor light one. But it's such an interesting episode, and there is such Russell T Davies fervour in Hadoke Towers at the moment because the announcement that he was returning came out of left field, and I'm in the mood for some RTD. I'm not in the mood tonight for the Macra Terror, which was the other choice that a story I was gonna do. So Michael Dennis, yours is coming up very shortly. So I'm gonna do Midnight, and also it ties in with Love and Monsters because it had been the original choice of my good friend Chris Dunford, who did such a brilliant job on the Love and Monsters episode. If you haven't listened to that, please do, whether you like the story or not. I think I'm really pleased with how that turned out, not least because my friend Chris Dunford did an amazingly thoughtful and rigorous contribution, and he very kindly had asked to do Love and Monsters. I'd asked him to do a different one because somebody else was doing Love and Monsters. And then Tom came out of left field because Tom hadn't been able to do this. He'd been too busy. I went, I'll do it, but can I do Midnight? And I didn't want to go back and go, well, actually, somebody's done that. So I said to Chris, can you do Love and Monsters? And he went, yeah, sure. And then said, do you want what my thoughts on Midnight anyway? Because I've already written them. So it's like, he's already done all of the work. So I'm sort of interested. I'm gonna. Chris hasn't recorded his contribution, but I think I'm going to have them as a sideline because I think it will be interesting just to consider those at the end. There's no points for it. It's just for fun. No points for the Chris Dunford contribution. It's just for fun. But his intro was that the story I've chosen is from the season I consider to be the best of all Doctor Who, largely because it contains my favourite Doctor companion relationship, the uncoincidentally the best companion ever in the inestimable Donna Noble. So naturally, I've chosen the story where she's totally sidelined for almost all of the story. But actually, Midnight couldn't be the amazing story that it is if she wasn't. And that's Chris, who, like me, fell in love with Doctor Who, hundreds of years ago. So he holds a much more modern iteration to such a high standard, in such high esteem, is I think a sign of just how thrilling it can be being a Doctor Who fan, even when you think you've seen it all, and even when you think nothing can beat the excitement that you felt as a child. That's been the real achievement. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So I'm fighting on two fronts. Tom Neenan, who very kindly and very unusually has given me a hint as to the areas he's going to be choosing, which I hope puts me at some sort of advantage. And Chris, who just gives us another perspective. And we'll see what happens with the points at the end. But for now, I have a DVD of Midnight, but I also have BBC iPlayer hooked up to my gear. So I am on that. But if you're on DVD or whatever, I hope you've all got it lined up. And I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1. It's a great opening shot, isn't it? I was in... This is a sad episode for me in a way, because I was touring my show, Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf, which I was touring a number of days a week, and I just had to go where I was booked and blah-de-blah-de-blah. And I was in Kirkcaldy, where my brother and sister-in-law live, but I didn't stay with them. I actually stayed... they live not far from there. I was put up in a hotel. But Doctor Who was on. This episode was on while I was on stage. So I was very grateful to everybody that came to see my show because they were missing Doctor Who. I wouldn't have missed Doctor Who unless I had to. But God bless Chris and Laura, a couple of friends of mine, who, I say friends, people I've met, Doctor Who fans I've met on my rounds, as it were. But I feel like I've got a friend in every port sometimes, who very kindly ran me off a DVD of this. So as soon as I'd finished sort of chatting with them in the hotel bar, I went upstairs and watched this on my computer. I almost wanted to not, because I felt watching it on a computer was a compromise. But actually, of all the episodes, because I'll be interested watching it. I'm watching it on quite a big screen now. You think, oh, well, you don't miss much because it's not a spectacle one. It's one of character and atmosphere. But actually, that can also, be marvellously enhanced by size. There's not necessarily an advantage to watching it on a... maybe I thought there was less disadvantage. But anyway, let's see how we go. I'm curious as to how I'm going to tackle this, because for a story that's about people talking all over each other, it does require a lot of listening. But I remember, I had no idea what to expect of this story. I love the fact that the little snacks and the trolley are very reminiscent of what we have now. That's Reiki Iola, who actually follows me on Twitter, and I've no idea why. And I don't want to jinx it by bringing it up. Her and Barbara Dixon both follow me on Twitter. I've got no idea what I offer to either of those illustrious women. David Troughton, lovely casting. Not the first choice. It was going to be Sam Kelly from Hello Hello. Hi Little Clop. Wonderful actor Sam Kelly, who was, I think, then hit by a car and broke his leg, and so David Troughton was called in at relatively short notice. But we'll get to it. It's a hell of a cast, and I chose sort of Andy Pryor in the casting for Love and Monsters, and I sort of going into this, I thought I'll probably do the same for this, but Tom has let me know he's choosing one cast member. Didn't he? One cast member, one character, one concept. I might have to listen again before I make my choices at the end. But this is my favourite film. It's 12 Angry Men. So this is like what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 angry passengers or whatever. But it just goes to show how pure drama can be. Hell, there's other people. But what's quite nice is this sort of false bonhomie and the sort of, surface pleasantries or lack of pleasantry from the hostess, which is interesting. She's not really that bothered, and she's actually quite irritated by the doctor because he sort of makes her go off script a little bit. But what is so good about this is, of course, is that your perceptions of the characters change as the drama proceeds, and as the pressures on each of them manifest in different ways. Now it's funny because I didn't quite buy this at the time. Interestingly, the fact that there was so much going on at the same time, I was like, but why you wouldn't be able to concentrate? But of course now, when I'm watching telly, I'm checking IMDb, I'm looking on my Twitter. I hate myself for it. And I actually, I hate being on the train and it's my pet hate is being on the train and hearing music coming out of somebody else's headphones. I would kill, were it allowed, let alone people who don't even bother with the headphones. So this is a joyous moment for me where the doctor, that would be enough to be my favourite moment in some stories, where the doctor actually gets rid of the noise. But I'd actually thought of it as being unbelievable, that of being, well, no, they wouldn't have so many different stimuli going on. I totally buy that now. That's Russell T Davies being ahead of his time. And I love this because you go, okay, this is going to be a story about, and the music's quite jaunty. It's going to be a bonding thing, and we know something bad's going to happen, but they've actually all become good mates, and they're going to have to gang together and fight the menace. That's a good old Doctor Who thing of, and particularly a Russell T Davies thing of people finding commonality and finding the best of each other and, sacrificing their lives. And I know that happens with one character at the end, but actually it goes in an altogether darker and more fascinating direction. But I have an Aisha Antoine. I met her once at a convention. Maybe she's very nice, but she's had an amazing stage career. She did something on stage at around this time that was ringing lots and lots of plaudits. And I know she's done some big finishes and audios and things. So, every single member of the cast of this is an A-lister. In their particular area, I feel. Leslie Sharp is a superb actress, I worked with her husband back in the day, Nick Gleaves, on his first ever job when he was fresh out of drama school, playing Donald Bain. He was in the Scottish play, and I worked with him a couple of times after that. And that's I mentioned this to Russell when we did. Who's Round, talking about the in inverted commas the gay agenda, and her, Leslie Sharp there throwing in my talks about her marriage and the fact that her partner is a she, and that would be enough to have some people going, oh goodness me, blooming gay agenda, and interestingly you watching it, and as somebody that's used to most relationships being depicted on the television being heterosexual, especially if you are, like me, a heterosexual person. That is what you see as the norm. So it's just sort of stick out a little, and it makes you go, oh, is he trying to make a point? No, he's actually just he's making it what it is, which is normal. And when something is underrepresented on television, little mentions here and there that are nothing to do with the story. No, she's not gay for a reason. She's gay because some people are gay. And I think what that helps to do is that, 15, 20 years after this, people watching television won't go, oh, that's a bit, is that a thing? Is that a thing? And I have to say, I probably did the first time I saw it. I probably went, oh, what's she? Oh, it's a gay thing again. Well, no, it's just she's just in a relationship. And I think, it's only when you think about that and how entrenched what, certain expectations are for people like me who are the majority representation in most things everywhere. Does it make you think, oh, hang on, what about people who aren't like me? Why don't they get the same amount of representation, or at least a decent amount, so that we don't come up and go, oh, hang on, what about? So I think I think he's just done a very impassioned speech, having won another award for It's a Sin, to remind us that for all his It's Marvellous and for all his joie de vivre and for all the energy and real joyousness of his storytelling, he's no slouch. He's no, it's no false bonhomie. There's an absolute steel and a zeal and a crusader underneath there, which is why he's such an important voice. And I like these. So I forget about these two because, of course, they don't last long. And is he called Tony Bluto? This guy, who's just got one of those brilliant faces from which character actors were hewn. And you think, and I think if he'd been working in the sort of 60s and 70s, he would have never stopped. I hope he's still working now. Yeah, he's certainly got a recognisable enough face, and it's a good name as well, isn't it? I'm sure he's called Tony Bluto. And it's one of those faces that British television needs. Sort of just brings a little bit of an interesting quirk, because there's something about his face that's just slightly sort of Toby Juggian caricatured that makes him an interesting presence to supporting parts. And that's what, sort of British films of the 50s and 60s were full of people like that. Your Sam Kidds and your Victor Maddens and your Michael Balfours and all of those people with, and this is great. This is great. Oh, do I seeing something? You see something and you don't, and do you see something? Do they do something? Because there's lots of little things glowing. This is actually a deeply frightening story, without doing, and it's all reliant really on the actors. Well, no, that's not to undermine the contribution of all the technical people that they do the magic that you don't see. Of course, the Doctor Who Confidential around this was fascinating, that they had to record it when some people were just mouthing the words and not speaking so that they could get the dub right, and that is extraordinary. But the fact that what you get from this is the intensity of the performances, I think is a testament to the unshowy work that all the technical people behind this are doing to facilitate it. And Colin Morgan, he's gone on to Merlin and The Fall, and I didn't know he was Irish until I saw him in The Fall. I think Daniel Ryan follows me on Twitter as well, but that's because he worked with Del Henney back in the day, and Del Henney, Colonel Archer in Resurrection of the Daleks, and this is brilliant. And Daniel wrote me a nice piece about Del for a tribute I'm writing for him. and some really nice words. I like the way the pressure. Oh, and this is good because it looks like, Dee Dee's going to be the ally. We think we know where the lines are being drawn, but they shift throughout. But, we're confident that as everybody is losing their head, the Doctor is the calm presence, and he's going to guide these scared people through it. Oh, no, he's not, because this is much cleverer than that. Isn't that a great idea? What's that great urban myth story that it's... I'm sure it's a haunting story we used to tell each other at school, or when you were stuck in a traffic jam or whatever, and it's about is it the woman in the car and she hears something banging on the roof, and you hear banging on the roof, and eventually the police come. Her husband's gone to get help, and eventually the police come, and she sees figures, and she thinks she's been called to her husband and the police, blah, 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 and they say, keep coming, just keep walking towards us, don't look behind you, and she cracks and she looks behind her, and it's somebody on the top of the car, and he's banging on the top of the roof with her husband's head. I think that's the punchline. And this is immediately what I thought of when hearing that banging. Just a simple thing. Nobody can be outside. Lovely mystery, because the planet is uninhabitable, or the surface of the planet is uninhabitable, and you have a very simple thing. No special effects. No words even. Bang, bang, bang. I mean, we've all thought of Doctor Who stories, and we all and we all talk about clever Doctor Who stories with brilliant, amazing concepts, that stretch the imagination. This is so simple, except it's like when you see a brilliant comedian telling a brilliant joke. You go, I should have thought of that joke, because it's an observation I have made in my head, but I've never put it into words like that, and it's so brilliant I never thought of it. And yet, as soon as I hear it being said, I go, why didn't I think of that? This is so simple. People in a thing and a bit of banging, and it's absolutely terrifying, because they're all really good actors. And it's such an obvious idea. Nobody's thought of doing it. So actually, it's not that obvious. It's just stripping away something to just basic scares. Sky Sylvester is actually not very nice, is she? Because you forget she's not a baddie at the moment. She's just a stroppy mare. But the pressure, and Leslie Sharp is so good. But Doctor Who is about taking you to the vast expanse of the universe and mind-boggling concepts and crazy aliens, and actually no, it's about that's really scary, that's really horrible. That's really horrible, and it's nothing. It's a camera, an actress, and a bit of banging, and it's amazing. But you go in, but they're not going to kill Leslie Sharp first. It's a cracking ensemble cast, but she's I would say the most recognisable star of the lot. But you're still thinking, but that's right. The Doctor's got this. I love the twist that we've got come. Well, not the twist. The and Rose. I'd totally forgotten that Rose was in it. That was another beautiful thing being fed through this season. Just tantalising you for what's to come. And I'm trying to remember. I think I was pretty spoiler free. The lovely thing about hang on, I'll give you some backstory. So this the bit where she turns round and it's just really, and the lights are off. Of course the lights are off. And the two guys at the front are dead, aren't they? Yes, because that's in the trailer from the previous week where they say somebody's died. So you're sort of expecting everyone to get picked off. You're expecting it to be that kind of story, but actually the two guys that are dead are not these passengers. So you get the deaths, you get the jeopardy from those sweet characters at the front, but they're not your core ensemble. So you're going, oh, so when I was expecting this story, and especially as the trailer had got, two people are dead or whatever, you're thinking, well, two of these people are going to die. And what's interesting is that actually the story isn't about the individuals being picked off, as Doctor Who has often done so brilliantly well. It's so sad that those two sweet characters are dead. But that's great because it gives us the jeopardy that we need. We've got a body count already, without compromising this space where most of the drama is taking place. Good work, Murray Gold, as well. But the lighting is fantastic. I seem to recall this. I seem to recall this turnaround is something quite special. I haven't seen this for a while. And funny enough, my wife at the time was an intelligent woman of great taste. She had particularly good taste when she chose to marry me. Not such good taste when she chose to divorce me. And I think she must have chosen to divorce me on the same day that she decided that Midnight was not her favourite episode this year. I remember she didn't, but it was obviously a similar lapse in judgment. She, because I remember I said, either I was about to watch it or I just watched it. And she went, yeah, it wasn't a particular favourite of mine. And I think I didn't realise how... Oh, that is amazing. The piece of music there, the shadow, the turn. This is 1930s horror film, and I mean that in the best possible way. And it's just a woman's face. That is great. But it's brilliant. Isn't that brilliant? I think that's an incredible moment. Really unsettling. Pure horror, but horror stripped down to its base constituents of... You don't know what's happening. There's something not quite right, but it's all made up of things that you recognise. A shadow, a face, a light, music. Oh, and this is really horror soundtrack. And I don't think I realised how special this was when I first watched it. I enjoyed it, but I think I was too busy afterwards going, I'm not... That's not what I was expecting. And I think I was also thinking, oh, this is obviously the low budget episode, the companion light episode. So I was thinking about its sort of place in the season as opposed to what it was as an episode. So I liked it at the time, but every time I've seen it since, I've liked it more and more. And I think... and because of where it stands in the canon, if I can use a pretentious word, canon's not a pretentious word. I think it is if you're talking about Doctor Who, though. There's nothing like it, and this is brilliant. And I remember on the Doctor Who Confidential, they had to remember, Pi. Wow, that is amazing and scary. And I love the fact it's Pi, because Pi's from the Five Doctors. Makes a bit more sense in this, but I always think of it's easy as Pi from the Five Doctors. But this is just, again, such a simple idea. She is repeating what people are saying, and kudos to Alice Troughton, the director, and her choices about the pacing and the cutting, and she's got coverage of not just the people, not just each individual face, but Leslie Sharp's mouth and her eyes and her turning head as well. Not just her eyes static but moving as well. Some brilliant choices. That the way that the pressure and the atmosphere is piled on. There's Lindsay Coulson is great because she's vicious, but again, David Troughton is not vicious, but we actually see everybody act in self-interested ways. What's happening now? Oh, but I mean, why is somebody talking Why is somebody repeating what? Well, it's a child's game, isn't it? It's what you do to annoy people. I do it now. I mean, I do a variation of it. My partner says something like, can you wash the dishes? I say, I'll wash your dishes if you're not careful. And I hate myself for doing it. I don't think it's funny. It's like a tick that I have, and I wish I was dead. But it's a childish parlour game. And it's really irritating when people do it. And in fact, you sometimes get people do it when they're trying to heckle you, when you say something to them and they just say it back or whatever. And it's so stupid that it's infuriating, because it's not even funny. And the fact that they think it's funny is infuriating. And then when you get annoyed, they think they've got a victory because actually what they've done has worked, even though it's shit. But this is so good. And, this isn't trick. This isn't split screen. This is, the actors having to be simpatico with each other. And boy, they're two really good actors. And I don't know how much rehearsal they had for this, but there's not an awful lot of rehearsal in television these days. So, actors have to get a rapport, think of good business, and have their performances as solid as possible in a very short space of time. And I bet this was hard because it's all on one set. Studios get really hot. There's not enough air. You get a headache. It's quite foggy. It's quite intense. You've got layers of makeup on. It's It's. I suspect this was a tricky one to make, but of course that helps with the atmosphere. So I'm not saying I don't know that it was, but I suspect it was pretty intense in your head. You had to, quite tiring. And he's so good. David Tennant is so good. But it's so brave that you think it's going, oh, and she's just sitting in the corner. She's terrifying. She's just a woman. And I love the use of this Goblin Men, Christina Rossetti. Yeah. Oh, I've just done what Sky Sylvester's done. We must not look at the Goblin Men by their fruits. Hungry, see roots. Yeah. I actually read that poem for. I read a bit of it on Halloween on the Seventh Dimension on Radio 4 Extra, but I also I read it to do at the interval for our Excess Malarkey Comedy Club online show, and never used it in the end because it took about 25 minutes. It's a long old thing, but it's a great poem, superb. But Tom Neenan, by the way, who is my guest on this, and an illustrious guest too, I will always be very grateful to, and it's appropriate that I was touring Moths Ate My Doctor Who Scarf by One Man show when this episode was on, because actually when I was doing it in Edinburgh, on the first night, some young drama students who were also in Edinburgh came with their fellow student, their friend, because he was a Doctor Who fan, to see the show, and that young student was Tom Neenan, and his mates who came along were Nish Kumar, Ed Gamble, and bless them, they must have come to see the show about 6 or 7 times, because every time I had a critic in, or every time they had a spare minute, they seemed to come. And of course they were students at the time. I had no idea. I went to see the show. It was excellent. The Durham Review they were. And they then Ed and Nish came to do my club, Excess Malarkey. But I'm really proud of the association that the sort of audience backbone of my first Edinburgh run, because of the Doctor Who fandom of one of them, was the cream of the current comedy circuit, with Nish and Ed and Tom. Tom doesn't do sort of live stand-up so much as his writing and his Radio 4 work. He's very, very talented. Of course he is. He's a Doctor Who fan. Ha-ha! Look at that. It's a brilliant shot just having her in the background. I bet she was really pleased when she was able to sit down. But it is that I invoked 12 Angry Men at the top. It is get people to boiling point, confronting aspects of their own personality through the lens of, somebody else's behaviour or what they perceive to be somebody else's behaviour, is, it's very clever. And of course the Doctor Who thing of the inspiring speech where they go, oh yes, of course you've reminded us that we're human because you're better than us, Doctor, but you remind us of our capability for good. In the face of the greatest odds, Doctor Who inspires self-sacrifice and compassion and invention and bravery. But in this story, he inspires none of those things. Two people are dead, she says in the trailer, and so I thought, clearly two of because you hadn't seen two of the other people, and and what it of course does so brilliantly here is that all of the stuff the Doctor normally does, you have to get past me. All right then, and who voted you in charge? And he actually seems, who put you in charge anyway? And Doctor of what? Suddenly, all of the things that we take for granted about the show, that the Doctor has innate authority, that the Doctor is clever, that the Doctor brings out the best in people, suddenly those things aren't working. And sometimes that's useful in the early stages of a story when people think he's a bit of a spy or whatever, and that can get him sort of put in prison or put in jeopardy or whatever. But this, as he goes on, he's actually the architect of his own downfall, because so many of the skills that would appeal to, I think, us as Doctor Who fans, his intelligence, his passion, his natural authority, is actually not what people in real life often respond to well. It's because I'm clever. That is so good, because that is what liberal people think when they're trying. That's a really intelligent approach to the eternal problem with trying to appeal for a liberal society, is because a lot of well-meaning people behave as if they are cleverer than the people who don't espouse the same views that they do, and that becomes a little arrogant, that becomes a little paternalistic. So how do you persuade the people that you think are doing the bad things that they're doing the bad things because they don't understand that actually to do the nice things are better? It's like, who are you to tell me what's nice? Well, because I'm a nice person. Are you saying I'm not a nice person? No, I'm just saying that I was trying to explain this to my son. I said, how do you win the argument? What do you say to people? And he said, well, they've got to know that they need to learn. They need to be educated. I said, hang on, mate. You're expecting to win an argument with somebody by telling them they need to be educated, because I know for a fact if you tell somebody they need to be educated, they're going to think you're an arse. They will double down and they will get defensive. And who is one to say to somebody else, and it's becoming a horrible trope, educate yourself. And you think, it's a great way to be told to take a hike. And I think that's what Russell does so brilliantly in this. And I when I talked to him about it for Who's Round, I remember saying to him, I thought, it's a nice way in to say, I like Midnight. It's Doctor Who and the Planet of the Daily Mail people, which I thought was a nice swipe at the Daily Mail, and sort of saying to him, and you're sticking it to intolerant people. And he very kindly, he didn't reprimand me, but except for the fact that he rightly didn't just go, he went, well, no, actually these people are not bad. You understand, these people all have clear motivations. They're not bad people. And in fact, it's well enough shown that the Doctor's behaviour could easily make them respond in the way that they do. So they're not. So it's not as sort of simple as I'd put it, and it's not as glib as I put it by saying, "Oh, planet Earth." And again, it's quite a glib. And also, he didn't go, "Yeah, and the Daily Mail are bad," because actually, that is an example of what I was discussing with my son. It's very dangerous to just go, "Oh, the people that disagree with me are either awful or they're thick," where of course everybody is actually trying to do the best thing, it's wrong to think that because somebody has a different idea from you or comes from a different perspective from you that they are necessarily bad or ill-educated. And I think that's the real problem with our society at the moment, is that there's people are looking down on each other from both angles. But anyway, I've gone on too long about what I think is the very clever layered characterization, and the fact that it turns all the Doctor's strengths against him. Is that the story now goes, we're now not having talking at the same time, not have her talking ahead. She's now somehow sucking the power out of the Doctor. And Tennant's acting is phenomenal in this, because it's all going on in his face, which they can't see. But also, we never actually quite know what has gone on or what has happened. But we know enough. We know enough. We don't know what the thing is. There's no sort of big sit down and saying, and what it does is it transferred energy. But it's the takeover is simply, I start mimicking what you say, I start repeating what you say, I start mimicking what you say, I start saying what you say before you say it. That's beautiful, simple, terrifying, and that's all that you need. And what she cleverly does is she incites the mob, if you like, but they're all people who are terrified. And they think they're helping her, and this is brilliant, because the Doctor is paralyzed. Yeah. Oh, it's brilliantly directed. Yeah, I mean, and it stays in the same place. You see, that's a really human thing from this horrible woman who's going to have the best awful line in a bit. But even though it's dark, there's and see Professor Hobbs, who is lovely and nice, is actually a bit of a patronising git, Nobody is one particular characteristic. Everybody sort of bats back and forth. Everybody is multi-layered. But I like the fact that it's Dee Dee that isn't quite sure. But of course, the stroke of genius is, and I don't think you see it coming, that the one that actually saves the day is the hostess, who you sort of take for granted because she's the member of staff, as it were. And the one who's going through the motions with her script, with her, sort of polite, robotic, slightly peeved politeness, if you like. Oh, God. And she's got such a great face. Leslie Sharp's done a brilliant, brilliant job of this without any pyrotechnics. Yeah. And yes, and that makes absolute sense. And we don't need any explanation as to what that is or how it works. It doesn't matter. And God, it would be so boring if he felt the need that he had to do that. We have just the right amount of information that we need, but we still. It hasn't even got a name, has it? It hasn't got a name. The monster in this, the the repeatazoid. The Oh, and it's nice casting as well, of course, that we have a Troughton. And David Troughton is a fine Shakespearean actor, as well as being Patrick Troughton's son, as well as being King Peladon and Private Moore in the War Games. He's also an extra in The Enemy of the World. Goodness! I think this is a remarkable achievement, and a very, very special episode that has an awful lot to say in a very sort of pared down. It'll be you next. Oh, that's she's absolutely vile. Lindsay Coulson's brilliant. They're all brilliant. It's a terrific cast. Everybody, an A-list cast. I don't know what else to say. It's just a brilliant piece of drama. It's a brilliant piece of drama, full stop, with so much to say about spitefulness and vengeance, but also it's an old-fashioned horror film, but it's also a character play, and it's Doctor Who, and yet nothing like Doctor Who has ever done. And I love the fact that the multi-bene and the Allons-y is what gives the game away. And again, we don't actually know of the mechanics of how that works, but it's enough of a chick, and she's realised that she's realised, and it does the moment of self-sacrifice, which is, a grand. So actually, in spite of what I said about none of the Doctor's things working, it actually ends on a great Doctor Who note of humanity, because of a little window that the Doctor opened, of humanity winning through just for a moment, but enough of a moment to vanquish the peril. And then, just when you think it's all right, you have the brilliant sting in the tail that just makes you go, humanity's not always all that. And it's when Lindsay Coulson says, as she's just about to, and you're seeing everybody, oh dear, everybody, oh my God, people are thinking, oh, what a narrow escape, oh, I'm slightly ashamed, people are sort of questioning themselves, and, so you therefore expect everybody to be, oh God, I'm so sorry, and you were right all along, Doctor, but no. I said it was a thighs, and the Doctor's look, I love that moment. And then the fact that she looks so ashamed of that is the multi-layered writing, characterization, attitudes, duality of humanity, all of that in one simple, petty moment. Actually, because that's sometimes the worst thing. I was talking about that person at a comedy club doing that. It's not the big borishness. And sometimes our attitudes. It's not when people are apocalyptically cruel. I think we, murder and all of those sorts of things are, they're remarkable. They're upsetting, but they're remarkable because we don't see them all of the time. And they sometimes happen, they usually happen to other people. And disease, cancer and things are sort of beyond our control. So they're awful, and they're upsetting, but they have great consequences built into them, and yet they're beyond our control. Pettiness, which can cause so much anguish, a small unnecessarily petty act can ruin my week, sometimes more than a bereavement, because I know a bereavement is bad and a bereavement is perhaps unavoidable, but a pettiness is avoidable if only people wouldn't be so petty and unkind, and yet you see it often, and even more so now that we're exposed to people's behaviour on social media, which I think sometimes magnifies those sorts of things. And I think it brilliantly, this captures that sort of the cruelty of spitefulness, which comes from, which is the result of a build-up of life, and resentments and relationships and disappointments and all those sorts of things. And again, what the Doctor tries to get us to do is to sidestep all of those, or to not fall prey to those. And how do you end this story? Oh, you thought he was just going to do it. He actually goes, no, I'm going to end it on a. And we don't go back to it, but that was a really unsettling time. And David Tennant's face at the end of that is brilliant piece of acting. And then you get this trailer for an episode where it looks like everything is gonna, go to hell, and the series is gonna sort of tie loads of strands together. And it is a marvellous episode, and one of the Turn Left, and one of the first episodes I did for Happy Times and Places. Before it is Tony Bluto. Before the idea of Russell T Davies coming back. I mean, if you'd said then Russell T Davies will show Run Doctor again, I'd have gone, that's absolute nonsense. There's no way he's going to look back or come back. So that's the reason I've leapt ahead. So apologies to anybody that's waiting for their particular contribution to Happy Times and Places, who might think, why is he jumped in with Tom Neenan's choice? Is because Tom chose Midnight, which is very much a Russell T Davies piece of work. I'm just going to remind myself
Thank you for inviting me into your happy time and place. My name is Tom
of
Neenan.
what he said he was going to choose. So he's just going to tell me the five sort of headings that he's going to choose under. So that's going to help me a little bit.
So I am going to select a character. I am also going to select an actor. I am going to select a concept. I am going to select an element of production. And finally, I am going to select a moment. So there you go.
Right. Now, the moment, I'm tossing up between two. I'm tossing up between Lindsay Coulson's I Said It Was Her. That is so good. The Doctor's look. Or the turnaround of Sky Silvestri, that horror moment, which is just a fabulous synthesis of all those things I talked about. And you know what? Going into this, I thought I'd choose the Lindsay Coulson moment because I just think it exemplifies all that's brilliant about the character work and what it says about us and how it reflects us. But I think that turnaround is magnificent. So I'm going to go for the turnaround of Sky Silvestri as the monster, as the Wordozoid, as the Larynxisaurus, as the vocal knight, vocally knight, or whatever else we want to call it. The speakathon. And he's chosen an actor. How do you choose an actor? They're all really good. Well, do you know what? They're all really good. Every single one of them. But I'm going to choose David Tennant because I sometimes think I overlook the regulars when I do this. And I sometimes, and I think a bit like Russell T Davies, I think I took David Tennant for granted a lot of the time. He's so obviously a good actor. He so obviously drives every story with that energy that he has. But he's everything he does in that episode is brilliant, and the way that the Doctor is used in that, the way that the Doctor being the Doctor is essential to how the story plays out, not just how the goodies win, but also how the goodies very nearly lose, and whether the goodies are actually goodies or not. So I'm going to choose David Tennant as the actor. The character. Let's. I think he might choose the hostess, and I can see why. Because I think she's hiding in plain sight, and the fact that she does her job in the end and is the one that sacrifices, I think is really important and very touching. But I think Lindsay Coulson's character, which then lets me have my, I said it was a moment, but I think the fact that she's so irredeemably awful, and yet she's the one that hugs Skye when she thinks she's safe. She looks so ashamed at the end. It refuses to allow us to fully condemn anybody. That's why it's so clever. But she's as close as you get. And I know the type. I know people like that. I've served people like that at restaurants. I've dealt with people like that at comedy clubs. Oh, and the problem is they think they're so right. They think they're so right, and they're horrible people. And yet, because I'm nice and liberal, I still feel sorry for them, because I can see that where they've come from is from deep unhappiness. And then I go, well, is it unhappiness? Because they don't seem unhappy. They're just making other people unhappy. And I go, oh, my liberalism is pathetic. It's just it's trying to make that's me trying to see that there's actually good in the world when actually there's not. And then and actually, how patronizing is that of you anyway? And you're not as liberal as all that, are you actually? And then it turns a mirror on yourself, and you go, and how actually like that am I then? Therefore, and that's what clever drama does, and that's what, you know, when it doesn't make you go, yeah, I'm right. When it makes you go, well, I think I'm right, but I also think I might be a little like that. And is that a problem? You should never have anything that gives you easy answers, you see. So I'll choose Lindsay Coulson's character. And what are the other two?
So there you go. Those are your arena
An element of production.
And finally, I am going to select a moment. I'm going to select an element. I'm going to select
a concept. So, well, the concept of the language, the repeat, mimic, anticipate, using language and repetition as the monster. It's genius. I mean, it's insane. It's taking something so simple, and yet so simple nobody's thought of doing it. It's obtusely brilliant, and also rendered so brilliantly. God, it's good. Simple idea, except it's not. And the element, well, is he going to say the sound? Because I think the sound and the way that that is all the element of production, the sound and the music, but also the mixing of all of the voices. I think real kudos to the sound department there. I think they've done an extraordinary job of, again, something that probably I think you don't notice because they don't make a show. You know, unfortunately, when you're doing a job like that, you're not allowed to be intrusive, because if you notice, they haven't done it well enough. So it's not like acting, when sometimes, you know, a bit of something a bit virtuoso gets the acting noticed. Doctor is full of moments like that I absolutely adore. But and that's not to say that acting where you don't see the cogs and wheels is not equally effective in Doctor Who and other places as well. But I think you can get away with, as an actor, you can get away with being what you're doing being noticed more so than other elements of production. And I think that episode is a great showcase of the subtle brilliance of the unsung other departments, but particularly in sound. I think the lighting's great as well. So that's what I will go for. Let's hear what Tom has gone for.
Well, we made it to the end. Yes, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did rewatching it. I think it's an absolutely monumental achievement in television on a small budget and as a cost-saving exercise. Isn't it always the way that the ideas that come from necessity are often the most thrilling? Okay, so I'm going to talk you through my choices for what I think are my favourite elements of Midnight. And I'd like to say that I think there are a million different things you could say about this. I think from top to bottom, it is a flawless piece of work. So Toby, please don't lambast yourself for not getting these right, because I could choose anything. This is just what I happen to choose on this particular day. So the first one I'd like to choose is the character of the hostess, played by Reiki Aola. Russell T Davies has this incredible ability to look beyond. He doesn't write a lot about kings and lords. He writes a lot about ordinary people with ordinary jobs. And when we're first introduced to the stewardess, we are introduced to an irritant. She gives the doctor too many items. She puts on too many entertainment systems. And she's clearly doing her job, but she's sort of one of those people that features a lot in television, who are sort of Jobsworth people who sort of stick to the rules and sort of do that unblinkingly. And then what, of course, the genius of Russell T Davies does is that throughout the story, he shows that this character is curious and is clever, and at the end is the only character capable and clever enough of defeating the creature, of spotting the voice patterns that she spotted from the doctor earlier, using French and saying things like Allons-y, and recognising that it is the creature which has stolen these, and that actually it is Sky Silvestri's, at least her body, who is the one who they need to eject from the cabin. It's so smart and it's so clever, and it's very generous as well. It's a generous way of looking at people, of saying that even these people that you disregard, of course, at the end they even recognise that the hostess they never found out her name. She is disregarded until the end, where she is not just intelligent and brilliant, but also incredibly brave. And I just think that's wonderful. I think it's incredible that he takes a character many people would simply write off as annoying, but then makes her the true hero. The Doctor isn't the hero in this one, she is, and I think that's brilliant.
Do you know what? I said, didn't I? And I'm kicking myself now, because I so nearly went with the hostess, and I didn't mention because I was talking about something else. Yeah, the bit where they say what was her name, nobody knew her name, and that's actually a sort of reverse of what happens with 12 Angry Men, where you've got all these people shouting at each other, but gradually getting, becoming correctly liberal as the film goes on. I still love the film though, and it's a great character study and great actors, and they go to the ends of emotion, the ends of the earth of emotions with each other, backing and forthing and getting very personal and blah 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 blah. And only at the end does Joseph Sweeney say to Henry Fonda, what's your name, by the way? And they tell each other their name, and then they go and they never see each other again. And that's the something beautiful about that, isn't it? A moment of great intensity. And I think this particularly appeals to actors because it's how you work. You get to know people really, really well for a very short and concentrated period of time, and love them, and get to know and bond with them, and have such emotional and verbal shorthands. And then you go and the chances are that that group of people, in fact that cast there, who probably worked very intensely with each other for a week or so, when that group broke up, that group would never all be in the same room again, and the chances are that some of them would never have seen the other one ever again. It's less so with Doctor Who because there are conventions and all sorts of other things, but with a lot of jobs, and certainly in the fictional world of that, those people who share that intense journey, life-changing, jeopardy, will have had that intense experience and gone away again. And that's a really interesting thing about humanity and drama. But what I also think is important to note about the hostess is I love the fact that I think there's something very honourable about doing your job, and seeing it as your responsibility, if it's your role. And I think that's an interestingly human thing as well. And you get it a lot with sort of military people in Doctor Who who sort of stay behind because you go, that's my job, it's my job to guard you, it's my job. But actually when it's somebody whose job is not to normally put themselves on the line, but who goes, but I am the person in a position of responsibility here, I find that sort of terribly moving and noble, because at the end of the day a job is a job and it's just your way of earning money. But if the captain goes down with their ship, but if the captain is somebody who normally hands out snacks and gives instructions, I think there is something hugely sort of honourable about the fact that you will go, well, no, it's what I'm oddly it's what I'm being paid to do, which is a total contradiction, because of course that's ridiculous. Why would you give your life because you're being paid minimum wage to do something? Well, because I'm getting paid and nobody else is. That's a strangely, stupidly, wonderfully human thing. And some of the things that we do that are good and noble and wonderful are also, when you break them down, stupid. But it's a wonderful stupid. I wish I'd chosen the hostess, because actually that ties in more with my worldview than with. See, I did what I did with Russell when I went, Planet of the Daily Mail. I picked on the one I thought was showing the bad side. I did, rather than picking the one that shows all that is great about us. And actually, as I say, what Tom said about being generous shows how generous Russell T Davies's writing is that, yes, a sort of Jobsworth character is, like everybody, a human being, and human beings, says Doctor Who, the series at its best, are capable of great nobility and sacrifice, even, against the most humdrum backdrops or from the most humble circumstances. Or, nobody is it's an ordinary job. Nobody is ordinary. Well, that's what Doctor Who, I think, how it at its best makes us feel our lives are important, at least to us. And that hostess, that train guard, that person who serves you in the shop, that postman or postwoman, postperson, they're all important, They're all people, and they all have stories to tell, but we don't often see their stories because we just see their jobs. It's really good. It's, I know it's an adventure in time and space, but I think it, at its best, it makes us think about those things. But isn't it telling that I chose the snarky one that I could use to sort of have a go at and be cross about, rather than choose the one that was life-affirming and inspiring? And there's a lesson there. That I need to remind myself. You can choose to be uplifted, or you can choose to be snarky. You can choose to be like the hostess, or you can choose to be like the character I chose.
Number 2 of my choices is an actor, and it's the actor who plays the villain of the piece, the baddie, the monster. I am, of course, talking about Lindsay Coulson as Val. Yes, I think that she is the real monster of this, because all the creature can do, who lives within Sky Silvestri, is mimic people's voices and let the monster within others come out. And so actually, it's Lindsay Coulson as Val who becomes the real monster of the piece, and the person who genuinely is leading the crowd and the mob to throw the Doctor out. I don't think I've heard the word immigrant spat out of somebody's face as nastily and as vitriolic as she does when she accuses the Doctor of being so. It was very both of its time and ahead of its time, I think, that she represents a certain type of person. It's not a very flattering depiction of those types of people, but at the same time, she's at the beginning, she's funny and she's amiable, and then when she gets scared, the monster comes out, and I think that's just absolutely exceptional writing, and also what a phenomenal performance from Lindsay Coulson as well. So there's no ego in that performance. She wants to come across as horrible, and she wants to be she wants to show the real darkness beneath the surface of this character, and I think it's an absolutely brilliant performance. Do not get me wrong. Everyone is amazing in this story. Leslie Sharp delivers an absolutely mesmerising performance, but what she's playing is otherworldly, and I really like the nasty, earth-based, very human monster which Lindsay Coulson presents for us.
Yeah, interesting. So, okay, we chose the same, but I chose it in the wrong category. And do you see what he did there? He led us up the garden path. I thought he was going to say Leslie Sharp. And I was going to say, I nearly chose her. But I didn't really choose Lindsay Coulson's performance because I was going to choose the character. And obviously the performance is a big part of that. And I always thought Lindsay Coulson was great in EastEnders as well as Carol Jackson. She's a very believable, down-to-earth actress, but with an intelligence shot through everything that she does. And I'm always pleased when you see actors like that come into Doctor Who, because it grounds the otherworldly, and it gives a really sort of believable backbone to the otherworldly, which this story particularly needed. Good choice. I had it in a different category, so it's 2-0 to Tom at the moment.
My third choice is more conceptual, and it is David Troughton, who and his link from the classic series of Doctor Who to this new iteration of Doctor Who, and how there is always, feels like there's a dialogue going on between the two. Obviously, we know David Troughton as King Peladon, and also more from the War Games, and here he is again delivering an absolutely fantastic performance. And I think it's so wonderful when you can see actors returning, maybe as the same character, or maybe not. Maybe it's just keeping them in the Doctor Who family because they're absolutely astonishing. David Troughton's a brilliant actor, of course, son of second Doctor Patrick Troughton, and it's so brilliant that even though I know a lot of the time Russell T Davies wanted to keep separation and wanted to be looking forwards a lot of the time, he still treated himself now and again to getting a classic actor back into the new series, and I think that's really special.
Well, that's I thought when he said concept, but yeah, anything that echoes the past. But I think they got the balance of those things absolutely right, in that wasn't afraid to do a little wink to the past, but also bold in moving forward. It never let the past sort of anchor it too much. But David Troughton, irrespective of his Doctor Who ties, is one of the finest Shakespearean actors of his generation, and a great TV actor. Bob Buzzard in Very Peculiar Practice is a great character. It's always good to see David Troughton in things, and lovely to see him in Doctor Who, albeit, as I said, by default, really, because it was supposed to be Sam Kelly, who I can see playing that part as well, definitely. Sam Kelly, sadly, who's so good. If you want to get Sam Kelly in Doctor Who, is in the Holy Terror, the Big Finish, which is a fabulous Big Finish by Rob Shearman, and it has a brilliant performance from Sam Kelly. He is so good in it. So if you feel like you missed out on having Sam Kelly in Doctor Who, give that a whiz on your CD player. I'm sure it's available in microchips now.
My fourth choice is an element of production, and I think it has to be Murray Gold's music. There's so little to play with here. There's so little to build up tension and atmosphere. It's one set. We've got actors, we have direction, which is also brilliant, and we have that ominous music, the throbbing kind of panic. And what I think that Murray Gold does brilliantly here is he tracks through music this growing tension and this growing mistrust within this group. And without him, I wonder what this would even look like. Obviously, when all actors place their trust in a director to make sure that they don't look silly, but also I think they place their trust so much in the score to sort of really eke out the emotions that they're going for. And I think that Murray Gold does this perfectly here. I think that the score for this episode is absolutely astonishing, and a huge compliment to the production as a whole. It seems like everyone is working perfectly together, and I think that his music really goes a long way to telling the story here as well. It's a huge achievement.
I don't think I could quite have that, although I did incorporate Murray Gold into my choice of the whole soundscape. But well, I mean, it doesn't matter. I could give myself that and I'd still lose. It's up to you, listener. You can decide.
And finally, my fifth choice is a moment from the story, and there are so many. I love it when the Doctor, out of panic, says, "Because I'm clever." It's people accuse sometimes David Tennant's Doctor of being arrogant, and yes, I think he is, but that's an arrogance which is earned because he's always the cleverest man in the room. But the thing is, you should never say it. The second you say it, you know you've lost. There's other moments as well. There's the knocking, when you realise that the knocking isn't just random noises or rocks falling. It is an intelligence outside, even though that is impossible given the information that we've been given. Absolutely astonishing moments. The first time that Skye looks up, and it's all just through acting we get this idea that this character is now possessed. Fantastic. But for me, my favourite moment is Dwayne Henry as Claude. The second that the shutters come down on the window that they're looking out of, and he swears blind he sees something moving outside. It's a brilliant performance from Dwayne Henry. It's a beautiful moment as well. It's terrifying. That's a moment that could easily be in a James Wan horror film, and it's here, and it's on Saturday tea time, and I just adore it. The fact that he's insistent, and he's the only one that sees it, and then the character dies. I love it. I love how cruel a writer Russell T Davies can be sometimes. We see it a lot in his dramas as well. He kills characters in a cruel way, and I find that very satisfying, and I find that very exciting. But yeah, there's this moment when Claude swears blind he sees something. He sort of puts it out of his mind, and then he sees it, and he's certain about it, and that's when you know that our characters are in danger. And I just think that is such a hair-raising, brilliant, perfect moment. So there you go. Those are my 5. I don't know how many we were simpatico on. I'd be very interested to find out. But it was just a pleasure to watch Midnight again. I think it's absolutely perfect television. Yes, thank you for doing these, Toby. I've really enjoyed them. They, through lockdown and beyond, I hope these continue because they are certainly a happy time and place for me.
Oh, good old Tom. That was lovely. Well, I got none of his things. I love the fact that we name check the actor playing the smallest part and he gets the best moment. It is a great moment. And I like the way that Russell T Davies services his actors with his writing, is that it's never not worth turning up to be in a Russell T Davies script, even if you're bottom of the credits and playing the smallest part as Dwayne Henry it is. But it's right, he does an absolutely cracking job, gets a great moment. And yes, the cruelty. It's weird because you don't think of Russell T Davies as cruel, because he is such a force of positive, creative zeal. But that's what he says we should be. But he never soft sells the fact that life can be cruel and unfair and mean, and he sometimes glories in it and relishes in it. And that's, again, to tread that line and to have that cake and to eat it. And it's a lovely, marvellous cake that's got poison and death in it. Now, beyond, I'll return to Tom at the end, but we have a bonus thing in that my friend Chris Dunford, who did so brilliantly on Love and Monsters, was going to do this. So this is what he would have chosen had I not asked him to change at the last minute. But Chris's thoughts are always articulately put, and it seems a shame to waste them. Thing 1 for Chris is Midnight is a prime example of Russell T Davies' gift for creating compelling characters with a few broad strokes. Yes, that's very good. None of the 7 characters travelling with the Doctor are on screen for even 40 minutes. None of them are granted much of a backstory, and yet the way that they're written, you quickly get to know how each of them ticks. It enables their reactions and interplay when they're put under pressure to gel so well, and that makes the drama entirely believable. There are very few writers who could create characters so strong in such a short space of time. Yes, indeed. Thing 2. Now, of course, I'm probably not going to have much crossover with Chris's things because I was trying to follow Tom's stipulations, but nonetheless, interesting. RTD showed that Doctor Who could make great drama out of a half-hour-long continuous scene long before Line of Duty did. Ha ha ha! And yes, I know Doctor Who's far from the first TV programme to do long, continuous scenes, but in this day and age of fast-moving television, having a single 29-minute-long scene that makes up 2/3 of the episode in what at the time was arguably the biggest show on TV is quite an extraordinary thing to do. Combined with the 2 scenes before it, 33.5 minutes of the story take place in real time. And the fact that it's in real time really allows the tension to ramp up over the course of the scene. Doctor Who has had a lot of base under siege stories, so it takes a lot for one to impress me. But this sequence does it with one of the most intense sequences the series has ever done. Yeah, that's true. And in fact, because of all of the other brilliant stuff about it, it's easy to overlook the sort of... Probably the fundamental thing about it is that it's one continuous scene for most of it, as he put there. I'm not going to repeat him, although that would be appropriate. And that is a remarkable thing to do, and they pull it off brilliantly. That does make it very, very special. Number 3, amongst a strong cast, there are several standouts. It's up amongst David Tennant's best performances as the Doctor, and whilst it's such a shame Sam Kelly wasn't able to be in the story as originally planned, David Troughton is predictably wonderful in his place. Lindsay Coulson is brilliantly nasty, and it's a shame that Aisha Antoine doesn't get more recognition. However, my choice for Thing 3 is Leslie Sharp's performance. She's always a brilliant actor, and it's no surprise that RTD loves working with her, and that he turned to her for such a meaty role, particularly once the creature possesses her. The moment this happens, her performance tells you without words that there's something totally different in there, saying so much with her eyes. The repetition and mirroring scenes must have been difficult, but she and the other actors nailed them. She's just remarkable in this episode. Yes. If I hadn't chosen David Tennant, when I was choosing an actor, it is a brilliant ensemble. They're all superb, but I would have probably chosen Leslie Sharp. I would have chosen Leslie Sharp because I think it's a remarkable performance. Thing 4. The creature remains unexplained. Drama usually offers explanations at the end, but Midnight offers us none. We're never told what the creature is, why it uses repetition in the way it does, what it's trying to achieve. The Doctor can speculate, but he doesn't really know. The fact there are no easy answers can sometimes be frustrating, but here the enduring mystery is fascinating and intriguing. Absolutely, it's not obscure for obscure's sake. It doesn't need it. It would have lost something had it tried to run rings around itself coming up with a plausible explanation. We know that what it's trying to do is bad. We know the gist of its methodology and the fact that it's really unsettling and that it will result in the Doctor's death, but we don't know its motivation. We don't know what it is. So say it doesn't even have a name. You know, the Chatter Knight, the Talkaloff. But yes, that is a really important element of it as well. There's so much in this. And Chris's final thing, there's so much more I could focus on. Alice Troughton's direction, absolutely. Particularly during the repetition scenes, with a lot of quick cutting and close-ups between the characters who the creature is repeating. The sound design with the parallel speaking subtly in the background is brilliantly done as well. But what I'll choose for Thing 5, the biggest threat to the Doctor is the way that the human beings react to the situation. The creature's ability to tap into everyone's speech doesn't actually seem to give it the power to do anything more substantial by itself. What it does, though, is tap into the passengers' psyches. The Doctor wants to study the creature, but instead finds himself fighting the dark side of the human's characters. Normally, the Doctor can talk other people round, but this backfires on him with a group of people whose paranoia builds and combines to the point where they're willing to cold-bloodedly murder him. It's a reflection of the sort of mindset that leads to mob killings, and just to avoid any ambiguity, Russell T Davies has Val snarl, like an immigrant. At the heart of Midnight is the message that people's fear and dislike of the unknown leads to ever more destructive impulses and to levels of hatred that cause real damage. Yes, indeed. How articulately put. I'm glad Chris did Love and Monsters, but I'm glad we had his contribution there for Midnight too. And it was very typically generous of him to, even as he'd written that eloquent set of observations, to then go, oh, well, no, I'll do another story if you've got somebody else doing Midnight. Bless him. But that was worth having. And yes, the story essentially says you've nothing to fear but fear itself, that hell is other people, and that actually it goes back to the very second Doctor. Well, not the first one. Fear makes companions of us all. That's what it does to the TARDIS crew. It doesn't to the crew of, doesn't to the guests at midnight. But, what do the Daleks do? The Daleks fear the unknown. They fear what they do not understand. And I think there's a lot of that still going on today. What we do not understand threatens our sense of self and our sense of identity. And when we are scared, well, we attack to defend, and we sometimes attack the wrong things. And in trying to protect ourselves, we sometimes don't open ourselves up to the things that we don't understand, which is when we can be very, very dangerous, because in spite of ourselves, it means we do bad things. It's a very, very clever piece of writing. I was very tired tonight, and I almost thought I'll do this another day because I know I'm going to have to be on my toes. And so sorry if I waffled in places. But particularly about, what liberalism means and what judgmentalism is. But I think that's sort of what the story is about. And I think, so, I find myself often troubled by the things I think, that when I think I'm coming from a good place, and how they must seem to people who are ideologically opposed to me, who think that they're coming from a good place. I don't know many people that are, even people I disagree with politically or see online, who are necessarily, apart from obvious racists and obvious, fascists or whatever, but most people are just worried about taking the bins out or enjoying their holiday. And most people, their first bit of sort of anger is tripped off by some annoying piece of entertainment in the corner, somebody playing their headphones too loud, or somebody being a Jobsworth and giving us the wrong snacks, or and so much of that is in that. Very, very clever. But aside from the fact that all that stuff is in it, it's at its core a terrifying, engaging, atmospheric, unsettling, sparse, there's no fat on it at all, piece of very, very good drama. It's a 10 out of 10. As I say, I love it more every time I see it, even chatting through it like I have today. I want to watch it again now. I think it's a great piece of telly. I think it's a great piece of Doctor Who. I liked it when I first saw it. I love it now. I think it's a 10 out of 10. Thanks to Tom for choosing it. Thanks to Chris for augmenting it. I didn't get any of Tom's things, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and listen to them, and I'm going to play them back and say what he says at the same time as he says it. And then I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to say what he's about to say just before that he does, and then I will possess him. But you knew I was going to say that, didn't you? Oh.
In terms of plugs, please give me maybe a follow at T Neenan on Twitter, and also do subscribe to Wheezing Groaning Sound wherever you get your podcasts. That would be lovely. Also, I understand that there is going to be a new series of The Haunting coming out in 2022, which you might be listening to this in 2022. I don't know what Toby's backlog is like. But keep watching Doctor Who, keep enjoying it, and keep talking about what you enjoy about it, because I don't think there's anything better. Hopefully catch up soon. Take care. Bye.
Well, listen, I would without hesitation recommend A Wheezing Groaning Sound. They have a Twitter feed as well, but they are a great podcast. You can get them from all the normal podcast outlets. It is Tom and his laugh, and Paul Litchfield and his brilliant voices, and Doris, and John Rain with his dry wit. They're a great combination of humorists who all love Doctor Who, but aren't afraid to be rude and askew about it if they need to be. They don't have quite as cloyingly a positive mission as I do, and I think are probably all the better for it. But less likely to bump into the people they're rude about at conventions, I'd say. But look, I love Doctor Who, so if someone's rude about it in an amusing way, I'm secure in the knowledge that that's fine, because and sometimes I agree with them. Sometimes I don't. I think they get a couple of stories dead wrong, but then it's great to hear them celebrate something that surprises me that they fall for. It's always a surprise. It's always entertaining, because they're three very, very funny people. And despite the fact that they are prone to take the mickey, the whole thing is shot through with an absolute love of Doctor Who and an understanding of how and why it works. So that's A Wheezing Groaning Sound, which is Tom's podcast that he does with Paul Litchfield and John Rain. Paul has also contributed to this. Hopefully we'll be able to get his soon. John has not yet, but that's because John always seems to be in a podcast booth and needs to emerge at some point. But I very much like having them in my ears. So go and have a listen to them. And I hope, if you haven't heard them, that this has served to introduce you to something else under the Doctor Who banner that is very entertaining indeed. All right. Thanks so much for listening to Happy Times and Places. Thanks so much for listening to Happy Times and Places. It was presented by me, Toby Hadoke. It was presented by me, Toby Hadoke, with special guest Tom Neenan. Patrons for this podcast include... I'm not going to say everything twice, but I quite enjoyed that. Patrons are Ruben Herfindahl, Peter Burns, Peter Harness, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, David... Jenny at Bluebox99, Paul Carrington, Paul Cook, Peter Crocker, Rob Dawson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Chris Phone, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Darren Mackay, Barry Platt, Luke Atkins, Pete Adamson, Anthony Carroll. That's not me doing the midnight thing, there's two of them. The music was by Dave Gates, and the podcast artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you too would like to become a patron, please go to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. There are advance releases, there is exclusive material, and all sorts of other goodies. Tiers start from as little as £3 a month to support an independent artist. That's me, apparently. And you can even get 10% off that if you sign up for a year. Currently, Happy Times and Places is about 4 months ahead in terms of releases. You get 3 releases every week, guaranteed, and sometimes some extra stuff too. There's an exclusive podcast called Far Too Much Information, which is an adjunct to Too Much Information, which is seems to be the most popular one that I do, which of course it is. It's the one that takes forever and loads of hard work. But even with Too Much Information, if you are a patron, you're a good 6 weeks ahead of everybody else with releases of those particular strands. So, look, if you could do that, that would be marvellous. If you can't or don't want to, that's fine too. You can go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke, where you can just throw some pennies in my direction every time that you feel like it, if you do. And look, if you don't, that's also fine. I'm grateful to you for listening, but I would like it if you could do something that costs you nothing, which is to give these 5 stars on iTunes or any podcast dispenser, and perhaps leave a few lines of review as well, because it does help passing customers to find me more appealing as they browse the windows to see what's on offer. And who knows, they might knock on my door and come and listen to me. And I'm not quite comfortable with where this metaphor's going, so just do that. I also have a Twitter feed at Toby Hadoke, and these podcasts have their own at Hadoke podcasts. I've also got a fan page. I hate the very concept, but it has to be done these days, on Facebook, where you can keep up to date with all the stuff that I'm doing, which includes a weekly comedy night in Manchester called Excess Malarkey that starts at 8 p.m. every Tuesday. If you can't make that because of geography or inclination, you can catch up with what's going on in the comedy world of Toby Hadoke at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. We have a monthly live online show on the first Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. But on that Twitch channel, there's also an archive of all the stuff that we did online during lockdown, which proved to be very popular and included a lot of fantastic comedians from the live circuit. So check that out if you think there's more to me than just Doctor Who trivia. I like to think there is, but I'm resigning to myself to the fact that there might not be. I'm pressing the wrong... I'm pressing the wrong remote control. Go! Oh, no, pause. Right. We're gonna... Now that was a genuine outtake, folks. I know, the hilarity.